Welcome to Across the Balkans. I'm Nafisa Latic. Great to have your company. Ethnic tensions are at risk of boiling over again in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Despite international warnings, Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik went ahead with a military parade to mark Republika Srpska's National Day. The day commemorates the declaration of a separate Bosnian Serb state back in 1992, which would go on to spark the brutal Bosnian War that left more than 100,000 dead, including the Srebrenica Genocide. The controversial holiday was deemed unconstitutional by Bosnia's constitutional court, but that did little to stop Dodik from using the day to rally his supporters. Melinda Nucifora attended the parade and spoke to the Bosnian Serb leader, who remained defiant in the face of global criticism.
Mislim da smo sada u situaciji podjele koja je daleko veća nego što je možda bilo i nakon samog kraja rata. Kada bi sutra Republika Srpska imala status nezavisnosti, mi ne bi imali problem s našim funkcionisanjem. I ja vas molim da naglasite da je ovo isto čisto hipotetičko pitanje o kojem razgovaramo, evo, vi i ja. Sada u ovom trenutku mi nemamo nikakve planove te vrste, ali imamo promišljanja.
Milorad Dodik has never shied away from controversy, but recently, the outspoken and often inflammatory president of Republika Srpska has upped the ante. So, we travelled to Banja Luka here in Bosnia and Herzegovina's Serb-dominated north to watch this year's Republika Srpska Day parade and gauge just how serious Milorad Dodik's secession plans really are. The Republika Srpska Day parade lasted for just under an hour and was dominated by nationalistic symbols and overt patriotism. It was a very deliberate show of Serbian strength. But parades like this one are actually illegal. Bosnia's constitutional court outlawed Republika Srpska Day commemorations back in 2015. January 9th marked the day Bosnian Serbs moved to create their own state in 1992. It led to the 4-year Bosnian War, which saw 1,000 people killed and displaced more than half the country's population.
Može se reći da je ovo provokacija iz prostog razloga što je Ustavni sud Bosne i Hercegovine ovaj datum odredio diskriminatornim i protivustavnim. On je također, u najvećem dijelu države Bosne i Hercegovine shvaćen kao provokacija.
In the eyes of his critics, this is just one example of Dodik's disregard for the country's state-run institutions. He agreed to sit down with TRT World for an exclusive interview.
Dan Republike nije usmjeren da bilo koga iritira ili da na bilo koji drugi način bilo kome nanese bilo šta. Naše poruke danas su poruke mira, ljubavi, saradnje, poziva da zajedno rješavamo probleme i da prođemo kroz izuzetno težak period. Naravno da je naša istorija teška. Naša istorija je veoma teška, puna konflikata. Ako nešto ne može za 3 decenije da uspije, a u čemu je smisao?
This kind of talk from the Republika Srpska president isn't new. But what is eye-opening is the action he's taken recently, backing up his troubling rhetoric. This is the Republika Srpska presidential palace, and it's from here that Dodik and his cabinet have been passing laws that many say are threatening the very fabric of the country's fragile peace. In June, the entity passed a law suspending recognition of the country's constitutional court That's the judicial arm charged with ensuring the country's adherence to the Dayton peace agreement.
Dodik is, with his rhetoric, creating a lot of problems. But this is just, how to say, a symbol of that what is going on in Bosnia. One side would like to have Bosnia without the entities. Another side would like to have independent arrests. None of these extreme positions is possible. Both of these extreme positions will create difficulties, maybe even another war.
Then last week, he announced the entity is preparing to organise its own elections, ignoring the structure put in place in 1995 to end the bitter ethnic war.
Te njegove prijetnje o secesiji i osamostaljivanju Republike Srpske traju od 2006. godine. Međutim, on preuzima zadnjih godinu dana neke pravne korake. On je usvojio određene zakone, a zadnji od tih zakona koji upućuje na to da on ima ozbiljne namjere jeste i donošenje izbornog zakona, odnosno prisvajanje one nadležnosti iz državnih ruku na entitetski nivo.
He's also signed a decree stating the Republika Srpska does not recognise the legitimacy or the rulings of the country's High Representative, Christian Schmidt. He's an internationally appointed envoy charged with safeguarding and implementing the Dayton peace agreement.
I da to učini neizabrani pojedinac koji nema formalno postavljenje kao visoki predstavnik, a da ima ne bi mogao to da radi. Bio vapaj za slobodom, nego je to i pokušaj da se oslobodimo kolonijalne uprave koja je ovdje veoma prisutna.
After years of talking tough, many observers say these steps are paving the way for a worrying future.
But you know, 10 crazy people is enough to start a war. The war never begins by being announced in advance, especially not within the country. And because of that, I wouldn't underestimate the difficulties, but honestly, I don't expect any big conflict.
The US has accused Russia of trying to interfere in Republika Srpska in an effort to stir up trouble and attract international attention away from its actions in Ukraine. But that's a proposition Mr. Dodik flat out denies.
On je više stvar personalnog osjećaja koji je vezan za jedan dio, evo nas Srba koji živimo ovdje, koji nesumnjivo imamo pozitivan osjećaj prema, koji sasvim prirodnim smatramo da Bošnjaci imaju ovaj prirodni osjećaj koji je individualni osjećaj, koji je blizak Turskoj i nekim drugim zajednicama. I mi ne mislimo da to može da bude greška.
But one thing the region can't afford to see is one Bosnian entity out of step with the other. Melinda Nucifora, across the Balkans, Banja Luka.
Joining me now is Zlatko Hadžidedić. He is the founder and director of the Center for Nationalism Studies, and he's based in Sarajevo. Thank you so much, Mr. Hadžidedić, for being our guest on Across the Balkans. So what now? What will Bosnia's state institutions do after what we have seen in Banja Luka that was deemed unconstitutional?
Well, that's a good question, because I can bet that Bosnian institutions will do literally nothing about it. That has become a common practice, not to do anything on the part of the state institutions. And the worst part of this story is not that someone is doing something that is unconstitutional or anti-constitutional, but the worst part of the story is that no one who is supposed to protect the state institutions and the state sovereignty is making any reactions to that. Dodik and his company at the authorities of Republika Srpska, they are just contributing to the gradual dissolution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but the same thing has been done by the authorities of the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Right. All those in power are actually playing a part in that.
Right. We spoke exclusively to Mr. Dodik yesterday. He says that the country has never been more divided, even since after the war, and that what they are planning is just thinking. They don't have any concrete moves. What would be your response to that?
Well, I agree with that. It has never been more divided. That's definitely true. And I simply expect that these tensions will be resolved by the actions of the EUROFOR, European military forces. They will probably just try to divide the country literally to protect the border between the two entities, allegedly from possible conflicts, from possible armed clashes. But I think it is a kind of a major plan by the great powers to simply create Greater Serbia and Greater Croatia by splitting Bosnia into two parts.
Speaking of the great powers, just a day before the parade, we have seen American F-16s flying over Bosnia. The U.S. says, and let me read their statement, the training event was part of efforts by U.S. forces to exchange tactics, techniques, and procedures, as well as to demonstrate the United States commitment to ensuring the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Bosnia. What was the reaction to this move? Seems like this haven't made any impact on Dodik's plans for January the 9th.
And it was not meant to make any impact, I'm pretty sure. He made a parade and they made a charade. You know, this story with airplanes is just a charade, which is supposed to send a message that the US is still loyal to the Dayton Peace Agreement, that they are protecting the constitution, sovereignty, integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but in reality, they are not doing anything against Dodik. Quite the contrary, they are supporting actions by the High Representative Schmidt, who is practically blocking all the institutions in Bosnia and Herzegovina and is allowing Dodik to make further steps towards secession. But as I said, these steps towards secessions are not meant to be realized to the end. They are just creating tensions, and they are meant to...
Yes, they've created a lot of tensions.
The institutions within the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina to actually create a dissolution,
right,
a peaceful dissolution.
Right, we have seen attacks on Bosniaks returnees a couple of days before parade. Is this the message that Republika Srpska officials want to send, that they don't want them coming back to their homes in the entity of Republika Srpska?
Of course, I mean, there is no dilemma about it. It is something that is pretty clear. They have sent many messages about not wanting to be a part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, not wanting to live with the others in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and so on. And for all that, they are not being sanctioned in any way, be that by the Bosnian authorities or by the international structures, including the High Representative for Foreign Powers. So obviously, they are sending a message, and this message is being received in a positive way, I would say.
Mr. Hadjidedic, the thing is, Dodik has a support from Russia, as we know. He has a support from Serbia. Just this week, Bosnian Serbs also honored Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, thanking him for his political support. So who can help here? Bosniaks and Croats who want to stay in one state. What is the solution?
Well, there are many instances which can step in, but the point is that they don't want to. There is a lack of political will for that. And obviously, Dodik is not only backed by Russia. I keep repeating that he came to power on the US tanks. He has been supported by Great Britain and the US for all this time. So there is a kind of a game between Russia and the US and the UK, how to divide their spheres of influence, perhaps. but all sides are supporting the partition of Bosnia. So there is no one to defend Bosnia anymore. Previous US administrations were supporting the integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, did not want a removal of the current boundaries. But the current administration of President Joe Biden is acting in the opposite way. They are acting along the lines of the British strategy of partitioning Bosnia-Herzegovina, and also of the Russian strategy of taking a part of Bosnia-Herzegovina to have a piece of influence there.
Mr. Hadjidedic, I want to thank you for your insight. Quite a grim prognosis, but it might help for everyone to understand how serious the situation in Bosnia is at the moment. Thank you again.